Welcome to the Monica Klein Show. Can you believe it? I started a podcast. So I'm really excited about doing this. And I have to admit, I am an introvert. Can you believe that? I really am. I am not used to being this vulnerable and sharing on a daily basis. It's not normally who I am, but I really want to do this because what is happening throughout our nation on so many levels, it really is important to me, and I want to be able to speak on these things, especially as someone who was a comprehensive sex educator of over 10 years. And I believed everything that they taught me. I lived comprehensive sex education in my own life. I thought I was doing a good thing. I felt that I was driven by compassion and I was really helping people. And in many ways, I did help people, not through comprehensive sex education, but anyway, I just thought, I really want to talk about this some more. And so this is the first podcast. Just wanted to introduce myself to you guys. Some of you know me, some of you may not. But just know that this is going to be coming regularly from now on. Hopefully I can eventually go to daily, and that's my goal, is to do this daily. My ultimate goal is to have a radio show, because I want the message that you believe in and that I believe in to be out there on a daily basis. It's so important. When I see, number one, I just think about branding. When we hear something over and over again, we start to believe that it's true, even if it's not. And what I'm realizing is that we don't have enough conservative voices out there when it comes to sex education. And the opposition continues to call us names, say that we are shame-based, that we're pearl clutchers, and really they just come and they attack. Now, I'm not interested in attacking them. I don't need to. I know what is healthier for not only children, but for adults. And it's definitely not risk reduction education. It's definitely not saying, hey kids, have high risk behavior, you can't help it, just put a condom on it, use some lubrication and get tested and just go on your way. Oh, if you get pregnant, we'll take care of that through an abortion and we don't even have to tell your parents. Why does that even sound healthy to anybody? It's not healthy. But the reality is that a lot of parents, not every parent, but so many parents are either just don't really know what's happening out in the culture, or if they do know, they don't know how to respond to it. And they believe this lie that I think has really been spread by the opposition as well, that kids don't want to talk to their parents about this, that it's uncomfortable, that it's awkward, and that you better let the sex expert do it for you. Let the school do it for you. And really, we have been submitting our children over to public education and to Planned Parenthood and to the culture for too long. And it's important to me because I taught sex education, I lived it, and I know what that world is like. And I know the messages that they're giving out. Many of them truly believe that they're doing a good thing. I'm not going to demonize them. I used to believe I was doing a good thing as well, until I heard from the youth that it wasn't helping them. When I heard from the youth that they had never heard the message that they didn't have to be sexually active. And when they heard that they could abstain from sex, they could choose not to have sex, they embraced it. And you know why they embraced it? Because they shared with me that they didn't like having sex. Now, a lot of people are like, that's ridiculous. They're enjoying it. Sex is pleasurable. No, these kids, school-age children, are not ready to become sexually active. And majority of them are not actually enjoying what they're doing. They're doing it because it seems to be the expectation. And studies are actually showing that comprehensive sex education classes pressures kids into having sex. Now, the polls and the data that I'm referring to, you can find on my website. But the kids are actually saying that when they're in a comprehensive sex education class, which is risk reduction, basically it's saying you can be sexually active and you can reduce your risk by using condoms, lubrication, get tested because we know you're going to probably get a disease anyway, even though you're using condoms, get tested, and then we can also refer you to a Planned Parenthood for an abortion. So they know that it's not going to work. So that's why they tell these kids to do that. And so these kids are basically saying, when we're in a comprehensive sex education class, we're getting the message that we should be sexually active. When we have condom demonstrations and they're teaching us how to put a condom on, we're basically feeling like the expectation is for us to have sex. So they don't feel like there is a norm, that an option is to not have sex. Comprehensive sex education isn't there to teach you not to have sex. It's there to teach you to have sex and to do it with condoms, lubrication, testing, and abortion. And I just can't imagine why we would think that that's healthy. We don't have classes of saying, okay, we know that teenagers, you would rather have ice cream for breakfast every morning. So we're going to show you how to eat ice cream a certain way and different kinds of ice cream. And then we're going to teach you how to avoid the risk of obesity or of having too much sugar in your body. We're going to do these things to help you prevent from getting diabetes. We're going to do these other things to ensure that you still get nutrition because, you're mostly eating ice cream. No, we don't do that. We teach the best to our children. We teach them nutrition. As parents, we want our children to be better off than we were. So even if we, like myself, lived a life following comprehensive sex education and then rejected it, I'm not going to sit here and believe, oh, I'm a hypocrite. I can't teach my child to do something better. Absolutely not. You teach your child the very best thing. That's what parenting is. We want our children to turn out better than us. So we use the mistakes of our past to teach them and strengthen them to do what is better for them so that they have better health outcomes. They have better academic outcomes. They have better relationship outcomes because we want better for our children. That's how my mom taught me. And if that's not how your mom taught me, I'm teaching you that now. So I think it's ridiculous that we as a society have actually accepted these organizations who really just put themselves on a pedestal. We have not put them on a pedestal. The government hasn't put them on a pedestal. They have placed themselves on a pedestal. And they're shouting from their pedestal that we are sexual from birth, which is not true. We are born male or female. We're born with a sex, but we are relational from birth. We are born for relationship. We are born to be held by our parents and loved by our parents, to respond to our cries. That's what we're born for. We're not born to be sexual. We're not born to be sexually active. We're born for relationship. See, if someone chose, is it possible for someone to choose to abstain from sex their entire life? Yes, it is. Will there be any negative health outcomes from that? Absolutely not. But will there be a negative health outcome if we don't have a relationship? If a baby is never held, if a baby or a person or a child or an adult is not touched or hugged in any way or having relationships, we will die. We're born for relationship. We're not born to just seek sexual pleasure. So these people, organizations, Planned Parenthood, Advocates for You, Seek Us, are on their pedestal saying we're sexual from birth, we're meant to have sexual pleasure, and it's our sexual right, and it's the sexual right of children to seek pleasure. That is awful, and they're misguided. They're absolutely misguided. I don't think that they're evil. I'm not going to demonize them, but they don't have truth. They're solely based on one thing: sexual pleasure by any means and in any way without consequence. But the truth is there are consequences, lots of consequences. And so it's important that as parents to begin to understand the language that is being put out there. When SIECUS talks about sexual rights, or any of them talk about sexual rights or the future of sex education, they're the body. They're really, I don't know if they're even a 501c3, or they might be considered a coalition. I don't know. But they're basically people from different organizations, Planned Parenthood, SIECUS, maybe some of the previous Title X training organizations. There's all kinds of organizations that have been promoting comprehensive sex education for years, which is risk reduction education. It's the same thing, risk reduction education. That's all it is. You can be involved in the high risk behavior, but you just have to reduce your risk. That's what risk reduction is. That's what comprehensive sex education is. So the message is, here's the behavior, continue the behavior. Just in case you learn about this other behavior, they're going to basically talk about every sexual behavior possible, and they're just going to teach your kids how to reduce the risk. That is comprehensive sex education. But going back to sexual rights. They talk a lot about sexual rights. So they know that we're going to give them pushback. They know parents are going to push back on this. They know conservatives are going to push back on this. So then they say, hey, let's call it a right, because people aren't going to try to smash, push down your rights. It's a human right. We have sexual rights. Children have sexual rights. So when we think about human rights, obviously there's an oppressor. Human rights of any kind, there must be an oppressor. There must be someone who's trying to take your rights away and is oppressing you. So when you think of children and their sexual rights, if you were to use that as a truth, who would be the oppressor? In other words, who are the people who would not want children to be sexually active? I know you're saying it, because I've said this at several conferences now, and I'm so happy, everyone says parents don't want their children to be sexually active. So when SIECUS and Planned Parenthood and Advocates for Youth and all of those organizations and the future of sex education are talking about sexual rights, they're referring, the reference there, they won't say it, is that parents are the oppressor. Parents are the ones who are trying to protect their children from being sexually active. So, the rights of our children, those rights, they deserve to be children. They deserve to be honored as they are, in the sex that they were born. To not be sexually active, but instead to develop healthy minds and bodies in their childhood. That their identity lies within their family, within their ethnic culture, within their environment. When they go to school, their identity starts to change into, I'm either good at math or at music or whatever it may be. But it's not to challenge their gender, and it's not to start planting seeds in their minds that they are sexual beings who deserve to have sexual pleasure. How did we even get to a place where a state like California could have that kind of education in their law, and that they are now just indoctrinating all of the children of California? But you know what, parents, that's our fault. It's our fault for not being educated. It's our fault for not running for office. It's also our fault if we voted for those people. But we can change that. So some states, like in Texas, we don't have that yet. Our people are trying to make it happen. But we can rise up in Texas together strong to protect the rights of our children to be children. Children's rights to be innocent again. So as I was meeting with lots of teenagers over the years, the truth is that majority of them never got the message that they didn't have to be sexually active. They were sharing with me stories of, and it was kind of sad, because not only were they sharing stories of sexual acts that they did not enjoy doing, instead of thinking that they could stop those sexual acts since they didn't like them, they were actually asking me how they could do it better, because I was the sex expert. So maybe I had the key of how they could do this sexual activity and it not hurt, or it not be uncomfortable, or it not whatever it was. But I was able to listen to that and say, so you're telling me that this is not something that you like doing? And they said, no, I don't like doing it. But if you teach me how to do it better, maybe I will like it. And when I told those kids, have you ever considered just not doing the activities that you don't like doing? Those kids admitted that no one had ever told them that. Not their mother or father or the sex educator or anyone in their school, a trusted adult. No one had told them that they did not have to be sexually active. You see, Planned Parenthood and SIECUS and all of them, they are riding on this hope that you will believe that we are sexual from birth and that our children are like little animals who have sexual desires that they cannot control and that they are going to be sexually active and there's nothing that you can do to stop it. And that, if that were a reality, that would keep all those organizations in business, wouldn't it? Hooray for them. But that's not reality. That is not true. Actually, the data is showing that majority of our teens are not sexually active. Over 50% of them are saying that they're not sexually active. Our kids want better. And they're waiting for their parents to lead them to what's better. They're waiting for you to give them permission to not have sex. You know, I don't know about your teenager, but mine, now he's 20, but even when he was a teen, there were many times that I could tell that he either didn't have the courage or the confidence to set a boundary, and he would, in so many ways, passively ask me to do it for him. And when I would set that boundary and say, no, you can't do that, or no, whatever it was, he would have peace after that, and he would be so close to his stepdad and to me afterwards because he knew he was safe. We made a decision for him that he couldn't make for himself, whatever the reason. Now, of course, I worked with him on setting boundaries and having that confidence because I observed him. I was watching him. I was listening. And I knew that he needed me to set boundaries, but then to also help him to become strong enough to set them for himself. And your kids need that too. I read an article some years back about a man who admitted that when he was a teenager, about 13 years of age, that he had been sexually assaulted at a library, at a public library in a bathroom by an adult male. And the story was very painful to read, and I'm not going to repeat a whole lot of it, but it was very painful to read, very traumatizing. But one of the things that man said, what happened to him though is he ended up becoming very confused about his sexuality, very confused about sexual intimacy, that he found himself in a dark world. And he admitted that even as a teenager, he didn't know how to stop it. I know it doesn't make any sense, and that's what abuse is like. When someone is abused, they begin to do things that don't make sense. From the outside, we're thinking, why don't you just leave that person? And why don't you just not go to the library? And why did you get on the internet and communicate with that person? I don't have the answers, but this is what I'm noticing. Young people, when they are assaulted sexually, don't always make decisions that make sense. And they find themselves being trafficked. They find themselves involved in things that get darker and darker, not because they want it, not because they enjoy it. And I'm not going to say that I can understand why. I'll ask one of the counselors that I work with and see maybe if they have an answer. But here's the truth of what I'm trying to get to is that he at some point said that he was sitting in front of his computer, or he was actually talking to men online and meeting them. And he said that he would sit there hoping his father would walk into his room and catch him and make him stop. He wanted that from his dad. He wanted his dad to come in, catch him on the computer, see what he had been doing, and rescue him. He didn't care if his dad would be mad or whatever it was. And I'm not saying that you should be mad. If your child, no matter their age, 16, if they're a minor, they do not have what it the maturity that they need to protect themselves from a lot of things, especially something as dark as sexual assault or human trafficking. And they need you to be compassionate and strong and be that leader to help them. Now, I'm not saying that that's what's happening to every kid, but it is happening often. And I'll invite some wonderful women that I met recently here in Austin from an organization that focuses on human trafficking so that we can talk more about this. But what really, like I said, what really stood out to me in that letter is that this man wished his father would catch him and intervene and make it stop. He needed his parent to make it stop. So don't assume that your kids want to be sexually active. Don't assume that this is what they want. Or if you catch your child looking at pornography. It's a very dark and powerful pull that it has on children. And they really need a understanding parent to help with that. But I will be bringing some guests onto my podcast so that we can start learning how to do that. How do I respond when I catch my child watching pornography? How do I respond if I catch my child talking to people on the internet about sex? How do I respond if I find out they're having sex? How do I just even talk to them before any of this happens? This is what you're going to find in the podcast, but also in some online content that I'm creating for It Takes a Family. But I'm really happy that you're tuning in and that we can talk about these things. So the main point here is that parents are powerful. You have such an amazing influence over your children. It doesn't matter if your kid is already a teenager and you feel like, wow, I didn't lay that foundation and now we're having a difficult time. There's always an opportunity to heal that relationship or start from the moment that you're at. I don't want you to have any regrets. Just start fresh today. And we'll start talking more about it and getting you the skills and the education that you need. Go to ittakesafamily.org and I'll start putting up some blog posts about different things that you can do to have that relationship with your children so that you guys are having really good communication and that there's trust within the family. That's what I want, because one of the things that I was taught by Planned Parenthood is that parents are a barrier to service. In other words, they know that parents are powerful. They know that when a parent is engaged in their child's life, that child is not going to be at a Planned Parenthood. And they're really hoping that you're not going to be involved. But the only time they like a parent being involved is if they agree with Planned Parenthood. But I'm telling you, risk reduction education, comprehensive sex education, teaching your child to engage in sex at a young age is putting them at great risk. And the reality is that majority of them are not happy being sexually active and would prefer to stop. And they really need their parents to help them to do that. So, anyway, what are some good things going on with sex education? Here's the good news. There are more and more sexual risk avoidance educators all over the nation. And there are more and more sexual risk avoidance curriculums being written and implemented at different schools. So what is sexual risk avoidance? Well, I talked about sexual risk reduction, which is engage in sexual activity and use condoms, lubrication, get tested, get abortions. Sexual risk avoidance. Risk avoidance is what you're already familiar with. This health approach is don't do drugs, don't smoke. It basically avoid the behavior that negatively affects your health so that you can have health, so you can be healthier. So sexual risk avoidance is really just teaching kids how to focus on relationships and how to focus on different things in their lives and how to also see sex in a way that it has more to do with intimacy and building a family than it does about just seeking pleasure and having, exposing yourself to disease and to unplanned pregnancies. So sexual risk avoidance is not necessarily faith-based. It's actually a public health approach. There is an organization called Ascend that certifies people to become sexual risk avoidance instructors. And then if you're interested, when you talk to your school, they can have sexual risk avoidance courses brought into the school through a grant called Title V. So we can talk more about that later. Maybe I'll even interview some people who have Title V, some organizations that have Title V funding and who are doing just that, so that you can learn more about what that looks like and how you can advocate for sexual risk avoidance in your school. But I'm telling you right now, parents, It Takes a Family is about educating you, mom and dad, because no curriculum and no organization can replace you in your child's life. They need you, and even if they roll their eyes at you, the truth is they love you, they want to know that you love them, and they want to hear from you, and they want your leadership. And guess what? You're already a leader. You're already a leader because you're their parent. So anyway, I really am excited that you were at my first podcast, and I hope you will tune in often to hear my podcast. Right now, my aim is to do it twice a week. And then as I get really good at this, I'm going to see you every day and hopefully also be on the radio. So that we can hear this positive message that is encouraging and strengthening families all over the nation. And my long-term goal is really that I can help build parent leaders all over this nation so that we're all speaking into our children's lives and into our communities in a positive way that is really strengthening family and marriage, and especially strengthening our children. So anyway, love you guys, and private message me on Facebook if you'd like to. You can go to It Takes a Family Inc. on Facebook, or you can also find me at Monica Leal Klein, Reclaim Parenthood on Facebook, or my organization page, ittakesafamily.org. Have a great day. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.